All right, Yisroel Wahl.
It's good to see you.
Finally meet each other. How long we know each other for?
I don't know, a long time. You know, you reached out
been
to
a
me
while.
all the way.
All the way. You were from the Rishonim. You were from the first guys that I ever did marketing with, right? Long time ago.
Long
Figuring
time
out the
ago.
Yisroel Wahl brand. It
For
was
the
good
brand.
stuff.
It was good stuff.
back in the day.
I put up some video and you're like, Yisroel, you gotta do more of this. You remember?
It could be. It sounds familiar. I do that to a lot of people, so you might be. You were from my original victims. Okay, Yisroel, what do you do nowadays?
So, a lot of business coaching. I work with businesses really around the world. A lot
Okay.
of people in the Lakewood, Toms River, Jackson area, but really around the world. Over Zoom.
Business coaching. What does that mean? Like, how does that play out, Tachlis, in terms of what the actual offering is?
Yeah,
People
so,
call you, they Zoom with you, you meet face to face.
so I meet face to face. We're in touch throughout the week, depending on exactly the person's situation. Sometimes I'm involved with different people in the business as well, their key employees.
Okay.
Really depends. It's really about how to take the guy up like a bunch of steps. Sometimes it's people who are struggling in specific areas. Sometimes it's more like, I'm doing okay, how do I laser focus and get up levels?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been amazing. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of a wild journey because I remember you, like, in the beginning, everyone has the beginning of their journey.
yeah.
And then everyone pops up in a new, some new iteration, and that's how life works. Everyone has their different gulgulim they go through, and life just pans out that way. Let me ask you a question. Okay, you're doing business coaching. You're giving people advice or guidance, maybe. We'll talk about what that exactly means. I'm sure you have a better way of framing it or understanding it. So why are you qualified to do that?
So it's a
And
great
you probably
question.
get that question.
Yeah, of course.
It's a fair question.
It's an amazing question.
Not a personal question. It's a question.
That's a question.
Okay.
I mean, why would you hire a guy otherwise? So my background was really all therapy for a bunch of years. That's my background. That's my history. It's all in the psychology of it, and I still work in that same lens. What it means is, if we look at businesses and we look at where a business needs to go, the real truth is that most times, at least somewhere deep down, we kind of know where we need to go, and we're still not really doing it. That's the real truth.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can actually accomplish those stuff that I kind of know I really should be focusing on, where would my business go? And take it a step further. If in every business, the real truth is there's a million variables, but there are only generally a few core ideas that at least 80% of success is based on. And we never have that in alignment. We're never literally focused on that. We may be focused on it, but we're not actually accomplishing that at the highest level. And if we can, it's crazy what gets done, but there's reasons why we don't. And if I can get through that and get myself in that right zone, it's just
so the emotional, the personal things that underlie business success. So let me take it from the other side. If I'm coming to you as a business and I'm saying, okay, I have a business dilemma right now. Should we invest in this idea? Maybe there's pros and cons, and there's risk, there's reward, there's practicalities. Do I have the staff to work with this? What are the odds I'm going to work out with this type of client? You're the guy that's going to come there and talk it out with me and tell me, make the line up the pro and con sheet. It's when I think of business coaching, I would think that the number one criteria to be a successful business coach is having a tremendous amount of successful business experience.
yeah,
That's what I would think.
right.
But what you're telling me, which is intriguing and rings true to me, is that really the best person who knows his business very often is the person running the business.
Right.
In terms of ins and outs. I love that from a marketing perspective because it took me a long time
Yeah, and marketing
to
is
realize
a classic.
that. Marketing is huge, but I have in my company, I really try to enforce this idea that customers are not idiots and we're not the gurus, magicians who come in, even though sometimes the customers see it that way, right?
Right.
Customer has a tremendous amount of knowledge in his world, and our job is to listen very carefully and understand that world, and then figure out what we have to do. So you're saying something similar. Does that make
Yeah, it's
sense?
very interesting because I'll have, relatively often, I'll have a guy come to me and be like, okay, should I buy this home? And I'm like, dude, you're asking me
Right.
if you should spend $20 million on this deal that you just talked to me about for 15 minutes? You're crazy, right? It's very, very interesting because what clients often want, and by me it's a little different because they get used to it, but like what clients always want is this sort of certainty, right? Like I could call this guy up and I could say to him, should I buy this building? And then he'll tell me yes, no. And if you do that and you actually trust the guy to tell you that, you lost your mind, because that's not actually how it works.
Right.
And the real truth is that it's a mixture, right? So there's a certain amount of pros, certain amount of cons, and we want to be able to do is function within that struggle, within that, not complete clarity, and be able to work it through and play the game. Because business at the end of the day is about playing a game. It's not really about, I know what to do, so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to make money. And it goes either way. I'll have a
It's
guy.
uncertainty.
It's
All
uncertainty.
business is uncertain.
All business is uncertainty. And
Otherwise,
until-
everyone else would be doing it.
Exactly. It's something I always say. A guy's
Yeah.
like, oh, whatever. I'm like, if it was so clear, you wouldn't have an edge. You have an edge because you literally are playing the game better than everyone else, not because you know all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating if you really think about it, because the average guy who comes to business doesn't think like that. They really think like, I'm going to find the product that sells. And as you know, in marketing, it's never about the product. It's always about where you shine more than the next guy.
The benefit.
Yeah, and it's where like you connect to your customers more than everyone else. So should we go there?
We could go anywhere. I mean, I'm curious where this all plays out, like in specific, in the real world. Like, can you give me an example? Give me a story. Give me an example of a business, of how you helped guide someone in a business coaching session. Like tachlis, not a theoretical type, but like maybe something that even happened, and show me where the business coaching, not saved the day, but what that where that added into the.
Yeah, so I gotta think for a second, not that when we talk practical, because of
Right.
confidentiality.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Let me try
Nothing-
to
obviously
create
no names and places.
Yeah, obviously. What I'll often have is a business doing a lot of different things. Well, let's talk about two parts, because some of my clients are like big businesses, huge with 1 billion employees, and they're kind of playing one game. And then there are people that are more have their business but are trying to like build it. And there's a different model there, because the person who has that larger business, it's different.
Okay,
It's
so let's
different.
pick one.
Let's
Give me-
pick the smaller one, because I
Take
think
the smaller one,
more
great.
people connect
Okay,
with that, because
sure.
that's more closer to
Okay.
most of us.
Sure.
We'll often have a situation where a person will come in with ideas, with concepts and things they want to be able to sell. Let's say someone's selling plants, right? So they have their product and they're selling their product, and everything is rocking. And what happens is we keep on selling that product, and we keep on trying to raise that numbers, get more of that sold, instead of being able to refine it to a place that actually would sell by itself. Meaning the ability to be able to let go enough and be able to take a step back, be able to see the whole picture, and truly be able to say, hey, people give money. I like to say about sales. Sales at its core is very simple. People trade money for things that they value more than money. It's not really complicated. That's what it is. So either it's not more valuable, or they don't feel it's more valuable. It's one or the other. It's not about tricking the guy into buying your thing. It's not about hiring the guy who's a sales guy who knows how to talk the right way. It's about really connecting that right. And are we doing that at the highest level? Right? Are we? I'll have a guy who's starting a company.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm bad at sales, so like my company is not doing great. And it's like, it's not about if you're good at sales. It's let's be able to talk about what actually is there that you're selling your customer. What is it that he actually wants from you? And how do we create an offer that he would have to be stupid to say no to?
Right.
Like, how do we have something that he's like looking at it and it's like, yeah, I should buy that. So being able to do that at its core is by itself super fundamental. Right. But what comes up a lot after this is really just the stuff that kind of hold me back. My anxieties that get in my way from doing those deals. The stresses that I feel and the stuff that I stay away from. The ability to be able to get in high-level sales calls or high-level meetings and not be thrown off in that situation. All that kind of stuff. And we think of business as this like logical step-by-step thing, and it's not.
It's very personal.
Isn't. It's very
I once told someone, for many of the businesses I know, this would be my equation. The business value is the differential between the boss or the leader's incredible magic abilities and dysfunction. The exact difference in value between that.
That's a great.
That is the exact value of the business. Not more and not less.
Right.
Literally, because usually the people running a business, I happen to run a business myself, but you have to be like a little bit crazy, I think, very often to get to a certain place, and you have to be so driven. You have to be abnormally driven to build a business. So it comes with personality, and it comes with things. So the
big
value of the
craziness.
business is the differential between the bosses, chesronis, and milas. That's the way I would put it. But it's interesting what you're saying. In other words, a business, we look at it as a logical. We look at it as like I'm in business mode now, and I left my personality and my stuff behind. But it's not. Business is a personal enterprise.
You know what's interesting? Somewhat off topic, but I think is so important because it comes up a lot in our community. Is take negotiations, right? We're not good at it in our community.
Okay.
We're just not. And I think a big part of that is because we.
But what do you mean by that? We're not good at it? I thought Jews. I
I
thought this is
know.
our thing. We handle. What do you mean?
Yeah,
We're
we
number
handle
one at
great.
handling.
And this
Yes.
is literally this. Because we somehow seem to believe that in business, like negotiations, like learning a shtickle Gemara, that if you're actually more right than the next guy, you're actually going to win. It has nothing to do with being more right.
Right.
Like no one cares how much you're right. And we're still stuck in that kind of space. Like it's almost like we look at business through this lens of like, oh, if it fits, it works. Instead of completely being able to let go of myself, get past all the stuff that hold me back from doing the steps, and actually dealing with the market as the market stands, because we get so stuck in like our ideas in our head of what's supposed to be, and like how it should work. So how my employees should act, how my marketing should be, like some theoretical idea. And business isn't that. Business is the ability to play the market, and we got to get out of that space.
Yes, it's a reality check. It's part of the reason personally why I love business on a personal level, because to me, I told someone before we were talking in the discussion here, that there are three major Musas Svarim that I know of today.
Okay.
Mesilas Yesharim,
Okay.
marriage, and business. Those are the three biggest Musas Svarim. If you want to have like reality check on your life, what's real, you can't fantasize unless you have someone backing you up and just going to cover every mistake, and then you're not a business person.
Right.
You're, good for you. You're having fun, but you're not. You're cosplaying business. You're not actually doing
1000%.
business. But business is such a beautiful way of meeting your weaknesses every single day.
It's so funny that you mentioned this because I had a conversation with a guy, like a very spiritual kind of guy, and he was like getting frustrated by the whole business thing. He's like, why do I have to do this? I want to just sit and learn. Why does Hashem make this to me? Like he was really getting into the whole spiritual kind of thing of that. And the way I view it is like, are you kidding me? Like to do this right, it's exactly what you said. It's literally letting go of everything. It's like all your midas, all your stuff that get in the way.
Your
It's
fantasies.
Yeah, like how do you let go the most, which is kind of getting really spiritual here, but kind of our job in this world is kind of to let go of ourselves and be able to live on let go of, just break through those stuff.
Yeah,
That's
and
hard.
maybe that's why Hashem created the world in a way that we have to. Now we're getting really getting tired.
yeah.
1 second, I just want to carry this idea for 1 second. His business is personal development because it's vicious and brutal in terms of how real it is. You can't fake a thing because the market will always correct you, right? And Hashem created the world in a way that people have to go through. Most people have to go through parnasa and have to go through business and have to go through this experience. And maybe there's some connection there with the Eitz Hadas. In other words, the original chait, what happened before, and why this is the solution. Because we know that it's not a punishment. So if Eitz Hadas was the problem, this is the solution for Eitz Hadas, not the punishment for Eitz Hadas. This is the solution.
To break those parts.
Right.
Separate.
Something was happening before, and now we have to get to that same place a different way through the avoida, like every avoida, through this avoida of parnasa. Now, I'm not getting theological, and obviously I'm not trying to say this is the only way. And of course, Torah is it's other way of doing things. But a person who finds himself in a parnasa situation, what you're saying, you're finding yourself in a situation of personal development, which could be an exciting adventure if you look at it that way.
I find it exciting.
Yeah.
I would say something else I think is really important. If
Okay.
you look at the difference between successful people in business and people who aren't as successful, there's you need to have siyata d'shmaya. That's number one. But it's not that the guy who's more successful has the better ideas. It's not. He's just able to execute with the market better. And that's just how it is. Like, I have the guys, the smartest guys, and he's not able to get that deal done. It just happens every day. Like, it's not even a thing. And then you have that guy who's half-brained, and he's just rocky, and everyone knows in their business. Everyone. You look at your own business, and you look at guys who are at the top of your line in their business, and they're not necessarily the best guys at all. At all. And some of them are. Some of them
I have
are.
to think about that a little bit. Okay.
For sure. You think about it.
I think
some
there's
of
the
them are.
tippy top. It's very hard to get I mean,
It's going to be
there's a certain
different in your
level
world
where-
because
yeah, maybe marketing.
yeah, in
is
your
a little
world, you're
different.
going to look at marketing
It's
through a little
creative.
bit of a different lens because
Yeah.
you're going to look at marketing as the best guy in marketing as being the most creative. But if you
Right.
look at the guy who's making the most money
Okay,
in marketing,
I hear you.
it's not going to be necessarily the
Right,
smartest guy at all.
that's fair enough. Okay.
Right. So like if you look at the best guy in real estate, he's not going to be the guy who understands real estate much better than everyone else. It's just not true. And a big reason for that is he's at the end of the day executing. He's getting out there and making the moves. He's making mistakes.
Right.
And he's fixing them along the way. So he's walking the journey and you're not.
Right.
That's the difference. So you could talk all you want about how like your idea is grand. And I have that all day and everyone's talking about their wonderful ideas. It's not worth much unless you're able to get out there and actually get it done. So we're still, and that's what I mean about that like Kumara kind of thing. It's almost like if in logic it makes sense, then it should work. And we ignore the reality of the business world, the reality of the market. And the market is, like you said, is the most
Market is
humbling
real.
thing out there.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. I tell people in marketing, people ask me like, what is marketing? I have a one-word response. Maybe it's 2 words. But marketing is street fighting. It's street fighting, and all business is street fighting. So
Yeah.
that means there's no rules, there's no preconceived notions, there's no beautiful, brilliant, genius plan that you're going to plop down for 50 grand and push a button. It's constant revising, it's constant taking a step back, it's making mistakes all the time in the best marketing plans. There has to be mistakes, it has to be built in. You know, finding your audience, figuring out the best way to speak to your audience, who's the most valuable audience. So, you know, I think what the bottom line is, it's in all businesses that way. It's street fighting, and street fighting means you have to swallow a lot of mistakes. You have to be able to like, I feel sometimes that there are certain tasks where I could give someone that task, and even myself, and one person would take a year to get it done, and there are other people who would literally get it done in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
They'd make 7 calls. Some people would slam the phone down and tell them to never talk to them again, and they would ditz out and move on to the next one.
Right.
And it would just happen. 7 minutes later, the right person would be on the phone.
Right.
And that's what I said. Like that's why like business is this place of personal growth, and I think that's pretty cool. So tell me, I want to jump in for a second into the world of Yisroel Wahl, if you'll
Okay.
indulge me. Where do you grow up?
I was born in Chicago. Most of my life
Oh,
I've
you're
been in
not a
Lakewood.
Lakewooder? Interesting.
I mean, originally I
Okay.
was from Chicago, but
Yeah.
and then we went to Milwaukee for a bit, but most of my life I've been in Lakewood.
Okay.
Yeah.
What type of family? Where do you like? Which? Give me the background. Fill me in here. I'm an artist. I have to paint the portrait.
Yeah, I mean, my father is the greatest man I know in this world. He's literally the God of Dar. Just sits in his corner, does his thing, doesn't make so much noise. People who know him. That's been my background. So it's like a kind of a different plane. He's not like on the same level as the rest of us.
Okay.
Maybe you, but everyone else. And
Sure.
yeah, and then I grew up through there. Went through the yeshiva system.
This is Chicago, or this is
No, this is Lakewood.
Lakewood? Okay.
Yeah, most of my life I've been in Lakewood, went through the system. I mean, there's the interesting parts, but
Went to
all in
Israel?
all,
Went to Israel at all?
Went to Israel. All
Where do
in
you go
all,
with yeshiva?
small place, right? Eichenstein's yeshiva.
I've heard of it. Okay.
Long Beach was
Back
into
in the
it
day.
back in the day.
Yeah. Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. It's
Okay.
like, we're getting to
Yeah,
that.
he placed his placement.
Yeah.
Job placements. Okay, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and then I moved into the world of psychology. Yeah, and I worked there. I was originally very behavioral minded, did a lot of training on that end. Over the years, I moved
What do you
more
work
to the
with practically
trauma-informed care.
in terms of psychology? Worked with individuals, couples, kids?
Mostly kids and teens. That was my specialty. Originally, I worked in this sort of like clinic. We were known for working with like the most difficult kind of cases. Worked with that with a bunch of years. Originally moved very behavioral for all those into psychology. Then I moved more, over the years, I moved much more to the whole trauma kind of world. But my world has always been a very pragmatic kind of approach, which is where it came up so much in business. The approach that I've always worked with was very much, and you remember back from when I used to do videos, it was very much like, how do we help your child now? Like, how do we do it now? Like, let's not sit here for a year. Like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna make the difference? How are we gonna make that change? So in the business world, it came up so much because that's all that matters, right? Someone comes in and, he just wants to, like.
Wants to move.
Yeah, he wants to move. He just wants to move.
Right.
And so it becomes like we can make those moves and change it. Like I work with clients, the majority still of my clients, I'm working on a 3-month program. And after 3 months, they're in a whole different world. Like when they're a small business.
So 1 second, your program is a 3-month program for businesses generally?
Generally, I'd start with the 3 months. program, and like the bigger businesses will usually have me longer because for them it's like, okay, fine, we're paying you. It's an expensive program.
Okay.
So it's like, but if I can, I don't have to change my business. The guy's doing $50 million deals, right? He's like, I need my thing to move a tiny percentage, and like, I'm covering what I'm paying you. The guy, it's funny. The guy would hardly speak to me. He's like, I don't care. He's like, as long as you're available when I need you and I can work through something, like,
It's interesting.
good, right? 'Cause
I
like, it
find
doesn't
coaching is like that. I do a coach with a diet coach now. I'm working on that. Not easy, everyone has their personal journeys, something I struggle with. But I find that just having this person, just knowing that I'm accountable, and I have to show up to someone and say some real bottom lines and report like what does it actually say on that scale and what did I eat, is extremely helpful. And originally, she was telling me like we're going to have a whole long conversation, and I don't have time for conversations.
Right.
So I have exactly a 3-minute conversation. I pay her, and some people think I'm crazy. Why in the world am I paying this person? Like talk to I'm saying this. My wife will talk to me for free. But at the end of the day, right? But at the end of the day, just knowing that there's a stranger, there's a tremendous amount of power. Just knowing that I'm not alone in it, I'm accountable to somebody, and I have to show up. And when there's a real problem, that'll show
so
up.
I sometimes undervalue it because it hits my, I'd like to say that I'm so much better, right? So like that everyone could do what I do is way above that. But the
as a
ability of
baseline,
accountability, accountability alone is such a major difference just because you end up doing what you need to do. But what I kind of stand out for and where I stand out is really the ability to actually make the guy not have to struggle. So the idea is the guy's coming in at the beginning of 3 months and he walks out, he's actually not struggling anymore. That's my claim to fame. So the idea is, it just changes lives. So it's actually interesting because I used to maybe be more on LinkedIn, like what's calling myself, like marketing myself. And it's great, and I still should do it a little more. But then over time, it became like, when I have the clients that just go around to just like saying, hey, he's the best guy that I ever met, then it's like, it's a much better sell.
Word of mouth, because it's an actual person who's doing something.
And it's like on LinkedIn, it's important. Like I need to do the reach outs just so like I should have the conversations with people. But over time, it became like people just telling the other guy, like, hey, I was struggling now I'm making tons of money, go speak to them. And it's like, okay, fine.
For sure, that's word of mouth from a direct person is the best. So let me ask you this question. So you have a business, right? Your business is business coaching. If you were to hire Yisroel Wahl as your business coach, what do you wish he could help you with?
Oh, I wish I could hire Yisroel Wahl as my business coach. That would be nice.
It's expensive from what I hear.
I just mean like I wish I could go through in so many ways. To be
I'm just saying, what's the direct?
To be perfectly honest.
What? Give me not perfectly honest, really honest. I want a real honest answer.
The real honest truth is that if the reason why in many ways like I'm good at what I do is because I struggle more than everyone else in those same areas. So I kind of learned the process. Like that's just the truth. What would be the thing?
Yeah. This is like the question they ask presidents. If you had to pick one weakness and say,
the difference is they're lying to you. They're lying to you. They're
right,
just
exactly.
Political stuff. I'm trying to actually give you the right answer. I mean, honestly, it's. I think we all have this on some level, but it's the ability to step out there and actually say it as it is. Many times, I know it sounds a little cliched, but like, there's so many people struggling, and being able to truly just, I hope this comes out clear, but just express to people and do the things that would actually have people. I take a step back. I am always uncomfortable almost being able to come out and say, I'm your guy that's actually going to help you go from here to there. And that's like a tough thing for me, maybe because of my background's in psychology, so it's always about like not making the guy feel bad and presenting it that way. And I'll even have clients that I work with for a while and they get upset at me. This happens all the time. Whoever's listening is gonna know this, and they're like, I called you, just tell me what I need to do. And I'm like, I want the guy to figure out himself and get to understand that. That's just my own stuff getting in the way. And if I would just say it as it is and just live it as it is and express it as it is, it would be just so much more powerful. I don't know if that's what you were looking for,
no,
but
that's I like it.
That's a big deal.
That's a big one. I'm just gonna go a little bit deeper in the rabbit hole because I happen to be in the mood. So what you're talking about, I talked to someone here earlier about imposter syndrome, which is something that I feel anyone who has a business, entrepreneur, wakes up sometimes and says, what is going to happen if everyone actually knows what I am and who I am? You know, if everyone actually figures out this entire scam, what if someone discovers the scam?
Then I'm
you
just
know, like
not that
this
good
guy's
anyway.
hiring me for $1 million, you know, to do this thing. Like there's a lot of achrayas here. There's a lot
Right.
of responsibility. Like I built up this business from scratch and I worked hard on it, but am I really capable of this or not? Right, that's part of it. And then part of it is, like you're saying, just the ability to be able to be confident with your expertise. You are an expert at something. It's hard
Right.
for people to really get comfortable
To
with
own
that.
it.
To own it, to
Yeah.
own your expertise and say, this is what I am. You're the professional in the room now. You know, you do have the experience. No one is perfect. Just because you make a mistake doesn't mean that you're not an expert. You work
Right.
hard at this. You know it. You know your craft. Right, and being confident in that. Those are things that I struggle with. So you're saying that's something that you also would love to work on and develop, the ability to be fully confident and to own your confidence and expertise, which is something that many business people do.
Yeah, to just get out there and say it as it is. I think
Okay.
we play games in our own minds so much at a time. And that's why we hire
That's, I
marketing
think-
sometimes, because
yes,
we don't want to be the guy
we
who
don't wanna
says
be
it, so
that.
I want the marketer to
Right.
say it for me.
They have to do it. And 100%. People hire marketers for all types of reasons, and that's fascinating. So my next question would be, I think it's a great point, and it's a great thing to work on. So what would Yisroel Wahl respond to you?
Oh man, you're making it tough.
I didn't say this was going to be easy. Because it's a hard one.
Honestly, I need to hire you
just.
just to do that. Maybe I'll be better off. Well, there's two parts.
A guy walks in, I'm saying, you know,
Yeah.
a guy walks in your office and he says, listen, I'm struggling. I have to own it, but it's hard. It's hard for me to have the confidence. So what are you going to do? You're going to tell me be more confident? Yay.
Yeah, no. The answer isn't to be more confident.
Okay.
The real answer is, and it's the same thing with imposter syndrome, is to be able to recognize, like when I have those feelings, to be able to experience that for what it actually is instead of my reality. I want to make that simple because it's like literally one of the most important concepts. I mean, the guy wakes up in the morning and he's like, I don't really know if I'm the right guy. Maybe I'm a scam. Maybe people are going to hear me. They're going to be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to go speak in front of this meeting and like, maybe they're just going to laugh at me because I don't know what I'm doing. Right? And that happens all the time. Like that's what goes through our mind. Sure. What happens is when I have that thought, I start answering to that thought. So it's almost like, yeah, but I'm not. But I really do know what I'm doing because yesterday, you know what I did for that guy? And 3 days ago, you know what I did for him? And then you're in that fight with yourself almost. On one hand, I'm like, I'm an imposter, but I have proof that I'm not an imposter. And that's what kind of most of us play out in our head. And what we want to be able to do is recognize that discomfort as like, yeah, it's important for me that like I'm not a fool and I'm actually doing smart things. So I'm feeling that discomfort. And not take it further. And when I'm able to do that, then it starts becoming just like a normal part of the process. Yeah, I feel uncomfortable. It's like the guys in sales that are like, yeah, I just make 1 million calls. They're like, how do you make 1 million calls? Why aren't you uncomfortable? They're like, yeah, it's part of the game. The guy's busy today, which I do. He's in a bad mood. He hung up on me. So it's that ability to separate that feeling from it being, therefore, there's a problem, to just being part of the game. And like, that's what you struggle with when you go out of there. It actually comes up a lot in negotiations, because in some ways, when it comes to negotiating deals, there's a lot of principles. We could have a whole podcast on that because it's a big deal. But in some ways, the guy who's willing to be the most uncomfortable wins the negotiation.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's big.
That's a really good one. The guy who's willing to be the most uncomfortable wins the negotiation. Shimon, like it?
Probably, yeah, makes sense. Look at Trump.
Yes,
Trump's
exactly.
a great example of that.
That's a great
No,
example.
because what happens is you'll become uncomfortable and be like, there's so much, much more than negotiations. People have this idea from whether it's TV shows or just people arguing of like what negotiations is. But the most powerful part of negotiation is just the ability to anchor and get the other guy to answer to you instead of you answering to him. And that's more important than anything. So it's the ability to like present that offer, put it out there, and then just like, and the guy's like, yeah, but that's a ton of money. And you're like, yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's no, I'm not coming and answering for myself. I'm not coming whatever. It's like, yeah. It's like, I don't know if I can afford it. And you're like, yeah, it's a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, that's literally the game you play. Now, if you're deciding that, hey, you want to give the guy an offer anyway, so give him an offer anyway, but that's not what happens. What happens is I'm uncomfortable. So like I start, and I go down that whole game. Right?
You negotiate with yourself.
You negotiate with yourself
right.
every time. And it's like, that's why confidence matters so much, because the confidence isn't even that, like, then you'll do different. It's just then you stop negotiating with yourself.
Right. But you're defining confidence as being comfortable with discomfort. Confidence doesn't mean that you're constantly playing in your head, pumping yourself up like a sports coach. You know, you're the best, you can do it.
I talk
That's
about
not what it
this
is.
all the time.
Right.
People think that confidence is the ability to not have to answer. It's not answering to it. When the guy makes fun of me on the side, confidence means, I'm like, so what? I don't know, that's him. I don't know, he got his issues. Confident people don't have that conversation with him and fight with him. Why would I?
It's really interesting. Yeah, I noticed this in business. Saying in terms of my business journey, it's like as you develop, as you deal with people who are bigger and bigger businesses, the common denominator you'll find is more and more quiet.
Yeah.
More and more quiet. They talk much less. They don't have to talk. They're not promoting. They're not pushing. They're watching. They're observing, and they're making decisions. And it's almost like the sign of someone who's reached a certain level of business. It's almost universal. I mean, everyone has a personality. There's a ton of different. Everyone has their personalities, but business people, the real people who do the deals, you know, work in silence. They don't give away. They don't show cards. They're very confident at it.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, in a somewhat similar vein, you know, I find that jargon, like business jargon, is always middle management. The little guys don't know how to use it. The big guys don't care to use it. It's always middle management. They're using like these fancy terms and stuff.
Right.
Like there's nothing to play. This is my game. I know my game. This is what it is. I don't have anything to prove. That ability to step into the ring without like doing all that, that's your superpower. That's what brings you to the table in ways that no one else does. That's what makes the little guys able to go in that meeting with a bunch of billionaires, a bunch of who knows who's in that meeting, and just play their game. It's not like they're answering and telling themselves a pep speech.
Right. They're just confident who they are.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, I think what you're talking about now is very relevant to the yeshiva experience. In other words, someone who's coming from a yeshiva background experience and going into business, developing a business, I think it's very common because we don't have the official, you know, diplomas on the wall necessarily.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that the diplomas, you know, always make a difference in terms of real business or in terms of the businesses that we develop. But I think is that true? I mean, I think that's part of the reason why there's so much imposter syndrome. Because everyone's like, what do you mean, like 7 years ago I was learning in the mirror? So why, yeah, you don't
I
see
don't
the connection?
find that.
Because a guy who went to college and he has a degree and he did his internship
You know,
and he did his thing, I feel more confident. I'm in the system, and we're scamming the system. We're all trying to figure out ways that how do we take a 30-year college experience and make it into 5 years because we have to pay tuition.
I think it's the exact opposite.
Okay,
if I may.
So talk to me about it. Yeah, tell me.
The reason why there's so many successful people in our community
Okay.
is because they have nothing to blame it on. Meaning, if I'm coming into the market and I don't have that degree and I don't have that experience, so I'm either gonna put up or I have no excuses. And that creates that skill set of now being able to say, okay, so what should I do? Whereas if I went through that system, then it's like, what do you mean? I'm
blaming the system.
I'm doing that thing. What do you want from me? This is what I was taught. We don't have that. So I think it actually gives us a huge leg up, huge, on literally everyone else.
I hear that, but I think at the same time, if you walk into a meeting with people who are all coming from a certain background and a certain experience, and you don't have that, it's easy to feel like, okay, am I going to be respected? Am I going to be taken seriously here? You know, what are my credentials? What are my qualifications? It depends on the field, obviously.
Yeah, but I think
Depends where you're going- where you're
I
going
see
from.
the people who are like at the top,
Yeah.
and they have the same imposter syndrome. So like,
That's good
I
to
think
know.
like
It's not
we
just-
think
yeah.
that it's like just me. There was a show I heard about. I didn't watch it, but I heard about this show. Basically, they have a bunch of people. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but each guy is told that he's the imposter. So he's like trying to
That's
like
cute.
play everyone else, but they all were imposters. So each guy thinks like if they get thrown out, then the show's over. Because like,
I like it.
right?
It's
So like
very-
each guy's playing on their own.
Storytribe, Judowitz
Yeah,
type
it's
of-
your
yeah,
style.
It's my style.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. I just heard about it. But like that concept of every guy's in the room, you know, that's part of why today people are so connected to people who are like vulnerable and it's taken out of context. We could have a long schmooze on that. But the people who just can walk in and own everything about themselves is very hard to fight with. It's very hard to argue with. They're like, hey, you know, you see the guy's been in jail, went to jail for 20 years for like murdering 3 people. And then he comes out, he's on this YouTube, who knows what, and he's like talking about like how, yeah, you did a horrible thing. Everyone cheers for him. It's amazing. The guy murdered someone. Why are you cheering for the guy?
Right.
I just mean like when when you really own your stuff, it's very hard to fight.
It's powerful, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, I think there's a lot of good things here. Can you give some quick tips? If you had to give, do you have that up your sleeve? Like just a quick takeaway, give me something. Do you do that type of stuff or it's more conversation?
It's more conversations, but it
Okay.
is much more and it's much harder. But I do think that there's one thing, like if you don't want
Give
to
me a
hire,
practical takeaway, something I could work on.
I think the
that's gonna help me in
problem
my
is
life.
with takeaways is that if the takeaways people actually did them, then everything would be different. They don't, and there's a reason why
I
they
always
don't.
feel like
but
the guilt of not doing it is already, it's very Jewish. You know, it's already half the avodah. Half the avodah is at least feeling guilty about not doing it.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I'll say it like this: being able to two things. We'll throw in two.
Okay.
Number one is being able to really recognize what is it about my business that actually matters, and then focusing on those things. Like, can I figure out what about my business is what's selling it, and then be able to raise that level instead of going all over the place, because that's what happens. We end up like going in a bunch of different areas and we don't realize. That's number one. But number two is, and this is so fundamental, which is that every business has their bottlenecks. And what that means is, if I look at my business and I say, hey, what's that one thing that if that was accomplished, my business would grow 5 times the size? If you could sit an hour every day, literally doing nothing else, besides for that one thing, throw things at the wall, play the game, there is literally no better investment of your time than that thing. And we find ourselves being busy with everything else except for that one thing.
That's a good one. Okay, Yisroel, great having you today.
It's amazing.
We'll
It's
be
good
here.
to see you.
Yeah, come to the Westwood more often.